Well. Good morning again, Dr. Hassan Kanenje, also joining us, Professor Peter Kagwanja, and also Dr. Mumu Nzao as well. Let's just begin with you, Professor Kagwanja.
I think in whatever state one is,
yes,
if you're wielding a weapon of whatever description,
yes,
and you're moving towards a security, or rather an area designated as a security compound, the responsible response by those involved would be to ensure that nobody is hurt, and including, of course, the person, if they are deranged or they are not in the best of the minds. But how do you know until they are apprehended? So it has always happened. You do know for sure that in all assassinations in the United States, behind them, we are told, is a madman. So you cannot take anything for granted. Abraham Lincoln was basically assassinated by somebody said to be not to be in the best state of mind. And you can quote other examples across the world. Therefore, you cannot take for granted that kind of a thing. You have to basically take the necessary precautions. No activism around it. It is basically that security, being what it is, must be treated as such.
Right. And earlier on also we'd actually discussed this, and I just went to my archives as well and picked out this particular article. I think I'd had a cuttings of it some years back. This was Ambrose Murunga that had this particular article, Avoid Wastage on Presidential Safety, and also was reminding us about Michael Fagan. He asks, remember Michael Fagan? He's a chap who climbed over the fence of Buckingham Palace one morning, spent 15 minutes looking around the royal digs before walking into the Queen's private quarters. He earned a prize of, he carried a piece of broken glass, this is not very clear, into the Queen's bedroom, and later explained that he intended to impress Her Majesty by slashing his wrist in her presence. The Queen was alone, so Michael sat on the side of the Queen's bed and the two exchanged small talks. In the meantime, the Queen pressed a concealed alarm button to summon palace security, and right, I cannot really, it's not very legible there, so I'll leave it there. But it just gives you a snippet of what really happens. It's not just in State House, but also at the Buckingham Palace as well. You have this security breach. But how critical? Because even this particular Michael Fagan made his way to the Queen's bedroom. So the Queen's is waking up and is seeing there's a man sitting on his bed, a stranger sitting on his bed. Dr. Mumu Nzao.
That's right. One thing, it's not good to dramatize some of these things, and this one, in fact, need not be blown out of proportion. This is just a young man who has been troubled, most likely, and the security personnel were well aware of what he wanted to do, and all they did was just bring him to safety. And they did it well, and so on. Professor Kagwanja was talking about a man who shot at President Lincoln. He's called Wilkes Booth, John Wilkes Booth, that time. And there were other factors around it. So there are many intervening variables that would cause people. So it's only that it stands out because, you know, it's State House and so on, but there are always security. And again, technically, it's not good to say security breach. There was not a breach. A breach is a technical term, but it's just an incident, and they happen every other time. But of course, what is important is you know, children out there and young people and other cheeky young people not to try some of these things and so on, because you can end up in a bad situation. Of course, there are more serious settings. A man just walked by and shot at President Reagan sometime in '81, and it was not a good thing. And they also had intonations of someone who had been disturbed by other issues. There was a young man called Yigal Amir who shot at President Jacques Rabin sometime in '93. And this one was, someone would go and read the Torah and say, our president is talking to enemies and so on, and they sentenced him to some kind of life imprisonment and so on. But those are more serious cases. This is just the case of a young troubled man and so on, and they have been able to bring him to safety, and therefore it's not interesting anymore now to sort of dramatize and to report some of these.
But we've had 7 attempts on State House as well.
Happen.
Are they learning lessons from this?
That's all right.
Actually, that is also a testament that we treat State House as the people's house. And so in some countries, presidential palaces, or the walls of presidential palace, you can only see them on TV because you can't even get close. With us, we can get close enough that we can actually start climbing the wall. And part of it, because we are a democracy, and the State House is the people's house. We've not closed off State House Road, for instance. We can still drive by. So it's not really a cause for worry. I don't think he was anywhere near posing a threat, to the President of the Republic of Kenya. And incidents such as these ones have happened, are likely to happen again. But I think what this also demonstrates is perhaps we need also to invest a little bit more in the mental health of our young people. He's supposed to be a fairly promising kid, 5th year student in mechanical engineering. That is something that's being left out. Is what really happened? What is going on with these kids? Are we doing enough? Do we have any mechanisms to make sure that we actually examine them to see that they are proper? Do we have any counseling that goes on in the universities? Because mental health is not something we invest very heavily in this country. And it's not just the students, including even some of our men and women who come back from war. Yeah, as in this is something we have to, because it's likely to happen again. It's going to happen in the future. That one I can guarantee you. So it's not about whether it's going to happen. It's not a breach, as my colleague just mentioned. It's just that people have access to the wall of State House and they may actually climb it anytime. And of course, you have security to neutralize that. So I don't think the big lessons to be learned, except that if, in fact, it turns out that these young people, and most of them, they are fairly young, they are having mental issues, is what are we doing? What programs do we have in place to make sure that our young people are actually taken care of, or people with mental illness are able to be given the services they deserve?
Right. Yeah. So it really also showcases what is really, and I'm happy that we are taking that angle as well, because it is just pointing towards the crisis that we have as a country on the mental health issue as well, because we had even a discussion here that amongst the 4 of us, 1 of us is likely to be mentally ill, or could be mentally ill. So 1 amongst every 4 Kenyan, 1 person is actually not mentally stable as well. That is according to a recent report. But we can actually just also hear from you, Professor Kagwanja, as well, as far as mental issue is concerned from our students. It's not just the students, of all the killings that we've had recently, the spate of killings, the femicide that is happening in this country. There should be a national conversation on this.
I think we need to draw from scholarship. And there is a lot of it lasting now almost 3 centuries with accessible information. Emal Durkheim was basically arguing that the richer we become as a society collectively, the more the cases of suicide come, and therefore the rise of the first industrialization in the 18th, 19th century literally was accompanied by mass suicide across Europe, more than humanity have ever experienced before. Now, in this country, we have never been richer, and you're going to be shocked by the figures that are going to emerge in the budget tomorrow. As a country, we have never reached over $3 trillion. By the time President Kibaki, I think, was leaving office,
$3 trillion.
No, 3 trillion shillings.
3 trillion shillings. Sorry. That's shillings. I like the dollar.
You like
that? So the 3 trillion shilling over indicates that we are really at our best as a country in terms of our wealth. When the former government was leaving office, I think we were shy of a trillion. We will not even reach the trillion. Now, at the same time, as a country, we have never been so poor at the base. The ordinary Kenyan is possibly are the poorest. And this has much to do largely not with the factors of the making of the Kenyan government. It is across the world, because the type of industrialization driving the economies is way above the ordinary person, which I think is why the president prioritized manufacturing and as a pillar, because it's only manufacturing that can bridge that gap. In this country, it is Safaricom and IT technology that is driving. So the ordinary Kenyan is a consumer, not a producer.
Not a producer.
Yeah, therefore, what you end up finding is that our industrialization is creating not just disillusionment. We talk about the youth bulge. 70% of our people are young people. We've been doing a survey in Murang'a County, and you're finding that almost 80% of the university graduates from that area are in the villages, without jobs, without anything. One old man called me from my village and told me, Professor, save me. I asked, what is it? My daughter is saying enough is enough. She cannot stay in the village again. So we had to quickly look for internship for the young girl to leave the village. Now, what we are saying is that it's not just mental illness per se, because we've not had a war, and wars are the ones that create mass trauma. What we have had is a slow, or what you call low intensity trauma within the country, that you can't make ends meet. In the university, perhaps you have not even had a meal. You've got to go for lectures. You've not paid your fees. Your parents have called home and you are told this is happening. You are already above 18. You think you are responsible even for your family. You can't do it. So there is this sense of helplessness. A help of that I am not doing what I need to do. I'm no longer useful. Husbands come home. You don't have rent. You don't have this. So that's why we have mass suicide. We have people killing each other, somebody waking up and slashing the whole family and writing suicide notes. So it has much to do, I would argue, with the kind of industrialization we are having, which we are calling the third industrialization. Yeah.
A very interesting point that you raised, because we also can tie in with what is on the front page of the Business Daily, because this also is very indicative of what is happening to the common mwananchi as well. Bad bank loans hit an all-time high of 345 billion shillings. And it says mounting load of non-performing loans raises queries on rosy economic growth figures that appear to be out of touch with the pain suffered by borrowers. The value of bad loans in the banking sector hit a new high as 345 billion shillings at the end of March, raising questions on the health of the economy, even as the lenders booked double-digit profit growth in the first 3 months. Banking sector data compiled by the lenders' financial reports shows that gross non-performing loans increased by 27.5%. Just tying in with what you're saying, that yes, the jobless growth that we are having, the youth bulge, and the youth dividend that is not being tapped right now, many of them graduates in the villages right now, but tying them now to the labor market is a different kettle of fish altogether. This is also indicative, as I've mentioned, of what is happening to the common mwananchi as well, that yes, we have all these loans, but you cannot be able to service the loans anymore. There is not much money, disposable income actually to try and just maintain your life or to service the loans that you've taken. So is the economy really growing in tandem with, mwananchi? That is another probing question.
There was a point I needed to add, that even the growth in technology that we are experiencing is adding to this helplessness, and it's a dilemma, because I talked to a colleague, to a friend in the banking industry, and I was trying to bring these figures I talked about, whether there is a way we can absorb them. They said, we are not hiring. I asked why. We are going technology. So even technology itself, what we are calling advancement, is literally leading to retrenchment of our populations. So that instead of having the guards who would be watching, you have now the monitoring devices, electronic monitoring devices. So the people from Murang'a, from Mingo, from Kwale, who would possibly be absorbed in a bank as part of the security details, now they're reduced maybe to 2, because it's simply sitting at a computer and watching who is coming in and who is coming out. more efficient, I agree, you know, more cost effective, but what happened to the masses? So I think the challenge the government of Kenya has is to understand that 70% of our population need jobs. Now, two, we cannot avoid being industrialized. We have to be industrialized. We need to catch up with the technology like every other part of the world. But how do we bridge the gap between this fast industrialization, which is completely out of touch with the ordinary mwananchi, except when they become the consumer as buyers of airtime and other things, and the coffee industry, the tea industry, the maize industry, the cotton, the wheat industry, and other sectors that are producing for us, avocados, the market. What are we taking to the market? And when you look at the wars between China and America now, they're talking about the G5, and they're counting billions of dollars, or perhaps trillions of dollars, that are going to be generated by the 5G technology alone. And that looks like a dream to many Kenyans. And how is that going to impact on us as a people? How do we harness this to increase the incomes of our people?
So